my friends. Welcome in. It is Thursday, March 6th of 2025. Um, as you guys know, yesterday was a bit of a chop fest, so I don't really have any type of specific lesson for yesterday. We can go ahead and take a look at what happened yesterday, but again, just kind of a choppy market. Nothing really kind of making any sense. So we'll go back and take a look at it. I do want to mention here in the overnight session so far that we got a really nice confluence of bullish signals as we were testing 70 here a little bit earlier. And so far, so good for that bounce. Now, it is pretty typical to see the market hold a level, get a bounce, and reject right off the 200, right? That's what I talk about every single day. That might even be the first test of the 200 ever since the sell-off occurred. So we got the crossover, and this is now the first test of the 200, and we're now rejecting right off of it. So this might be a great kind of lesson here to start the morning. Just kind of showing you the textbook price action off of these moving averages and the roadmap levels, right? So all night here, you can see there's been a pretty healthy sell-off in an extreme type of sell-off, an aggressive sell-off. As you guys know, your fast-moving average is your best friend, right? So sometimes you don't quite know if you're in one of these more aggressive moving markets, but especially in the middle of the night, if this is just slowly chugging around. But when you have a lot of volatility one way or the other, and you start to see some kind of typical stuff holding just below FMA in a strong move, this can become your best friend. And this is a great example of that just in the last couple hours here leading up into the open, right? So the market sold off last night. Notice what happened here in the overnight session. We held the roadmap level. In fact, the high of the overnight session, short in that roadmap level, you took almost no risk, and that would have been it. But you have that, and then you have for a while the bulls defending the very roadmap level that's next on the chart there at 58.40. And so they defended. We got this double top, and there was a divergence there on that swing. And then we started this big sell-off. So on the way down here, probably the sexiest thing, and I wasn't trading here at 3 in the morning, my time, was this tag of the back end of the roadmap level in confluence with the FMA. And then the icing on the cake of that is you're seeing a whole bunch of divergence as that was occurring. So there was a really good short opportunity here about 3-4 hours ago. And like I said, the FMA becomes your best friend. So the whole way down, you get divergences and tests of the FMA. Right here is another tag. So again, this is stair-step price action using the roadmap levels. We tag the first one in the overnight. They get down below there. Now, ideally, they come back and tag this one, but it was an aggressive sell-off. So they kept going. They went through the next roadmap level, came back and kissed that. Then they came down, pushed through that roadmap level, came down to the next one, kissed the back end of this one. And then we traveled down, came up to the back end of this one. Now, it wasn't quite a perfect kiss on the first test, but then we come down, bounce off the next roadmap level, and kiss it there. So you can see it's quite literally like almost one by one. Each roadmap level becomes the next stair step on this way down. And then they come right into the next roadmap area here where you can see for both tests, we basically hold. There was a test and a bounce, a peek through, a test and a bounce, and a bounce a little bit later. And what do? They step off the back end of that roadmap level again to come down. And now here in the last couple minutes, we got a nice bullish confluence as they were coming down into the next roadmap level. And now here we are with this nice bounce. And again, textbook rejection right off the first test of the 200. So this might just be kind of a good lesson on scalping around the fast moving average and the slow moving average, right? So great stuff. If you want to see what I'm seeing down right now off of the current overnight low, well, what do I have? Look at that beautiful pattern. So now we're not looking in the past and just trying to pretend like we're looking for a signal. Now you can basically see, as we were testing it earlier, there's the divergence. Here it is starting to kind of build up. And then obviously we would want to see them break that swing to start to quote, confirm it. I mean, they could get through, confirms the signal. Doesn't mean they're not going to reject off the VWAP or the next roadmap level, but that would be kind of the first thing we need to see here. But see that on the 15-minute. We come over to our 30-minute chart, and I was watching this, and look what happens when they come in and test 57.70, our roadmap level, to the tick. What kind of pattern is going on right there, right? And now, as in the last couple minutes, I guess in an hour now, you can now see we actually completed the apex of that that structure in there. There's the divergence, and again, they are trying to push right now. So we've got a confluence of the 30, the 15, and then if we jump on down to the 3-minute here, the 3-minute was showing maybe not a nice local divergence from the swing, that swing to that swing, but we've got the divergence from the previous swing back here, right? So the last major swing low compared to the current swing low, pushing lower in price, push higher on RVI, and so there's your 3-minute agreeing with that 15 and that 30-minute signal. And again, we pushed out, we rejected here right off the 200 moving average. If you can look, zoom in on the 512. And now here we are trying to continue to go. And you know, yesterday we actually talked about this. A lot of people, when they start to get a confluence from an area and they expect a rotation from an area, they wait for that first push and then they get long around 50%. So here in this case, 61 would have been better, but usually they have their stops lower down. So that is kind of your typical first move out from a confluence of signals. And now here they are retracing right to the 61, bounce to the tick, basically to the tick, peak below by a point or 2 points, and then bam, coming back. Now, as you guys know, and I think this is just how this lesson will go today, is we need to get through the first expected resistance on this type of setup. So if we zoom out and look, we've been in a strong downtrend. We're coming into a level of expected support. We've got a confluence of multiple time frames hinting for the bulls as we get close to the open here. And so far, they've got the bullish push out, but they cannot get through the 200. So this is all textbook stuff that I teach and that we look at and trade every day. And this is kind of a clue that maybe all of that confluence from here that might have given you a nice 10, 20 point trade right to where you should have taken your profit. It might not follow through now for a bigger push. We need to get through the 200 moving average, right? So this is kind of a good lesson. I didn't have anything planned, but it just kind of came out. It's a good lesson in trading and scalping around the shorter time frame chart, right? So as we speak right now, we do have clues for a bounce from there. We've already gotten quite literally a 20-point bounce from there, almost perfectly a 20-point push and almost perfectly rejecting off the 200. So again, is this going to now follow through for another 20, 30, 40, 50 points? I can't tell you that, but I can tell you if they can get through this 200 and we don't just kind of reject and come back into this area, we do have clues for the push at least into the first roadmap level, at least up into VWAP, and then we'll see what happens from there. Because we all know what happens around the 200, what happens around our roadmap levels, and what happens right around VWAP. We see it happen day in, day out. And so that might be our lesson for this morning, just scalping around these areas. I can show you yesterday here, just going back to kind of review what happened. You can see the high of the day. They pushed for, again, I think we got nearly over 100 point push yesterday from the low of the day, which was almost a test of the low of yesterday right there, just below our roadmap level. Remember, we came down the day before yesterday, right into this roadmap level, and then bounced out for a big bounce. Well, yesterday, after the market opened, we pulled back, They came almost back to the low of the day before. And then again, we got this nearly 100 and what is it? Let's see, 57.50. There's 58.50. That's 100 points. And then that was it. So just over 100 points. And notice where they come to at the end of the day yesterday to make the high of the day, right to the roadmap level, where you did have, again, some divergences forming as we were testing up into that area. In fact, the final high is a very clear bearish divergence from the previous two swings. So you had that, and then this right here, again, if you're getting short, you probably want to have your stop above the swing of your setup. But coming back right here, you got that final little pattern, which I really love. It is pretty aggressive, but you do have that double top, you have the divergence, and then bam, it drops right off of that, right? So that was the high of yesterday. And then you can see down, if we go back to the lows, this was a big mega push. And actually you had some beautiful textbook stuff on the way up. Remember, I was just talking about when we get a strong move out of an area, what is your best friend? And that is the fast moving average. So yesterday, as we're pushing out, we have 1, 2, I think there was a third right there. Every time they came into the FMA, you had a low risk opportunity. And then as they got the deeper pullback, the first test of the 200 moving average after the crossover with a huge bullish divergence, look at that beautiful pattern. You then get a zero risk opportunity if you took the 200 and got yourself the push. I was going to say to the high of the day, but of course they did have to come down and bounce right off the roadmap level before we went to the high of the day up here. But you got a pretty decent trade off of that, right? That's 58.44 all the way up to 60. We're talking a greater than a 15-point pop. So pretty good stuff. So again, I'm just trying to show you guys how to trade around these areas on the short time frame, scalping around this stuff. They came all the way up later in that original push from the low of the day. They come all the way right to Hopeful. That's another trade I teach when we're really far from Hopeful and the market is rallying all the way back up into it, or it's selling off down into Hopeful, wherever it happens to be for the day. If you see a nice clear divergence as they're testing it, which we got right there, double top, bearish divergence, that's a pretty decent opportunity right there. You know, if the Hopeful's going to hold, typically they're not going through it by more than 2 points. And this could be a nice sell-off back to test the 200. So you know you've got yourself a greater than a 10-point potential to where you would expect the market to get its first bounce, right? And in this case, it didn't bounce off of it like it did earlier. That began the deeper pullback, right? So you ended up turning into a pretty decent trade if you had some runners, right? Hopefully taking profit just in front of VWAP, because we know that a lot of times, especially being this far away, coming all the way back into VWAP, we very well could get a bounce. So I probably would have told you guys, had we been short together, this was later on in the day, I wasn't even at the charts, that if we're short from here, let's take some profit about 1.5 points in front, 2 points in front, and you would have nailed the low of the move. You could have got in at the high and gotten out at the low, and that's just kind of textbook day in, day in, if you're trading the levels that I trade. So that's kind of it. You know, we can look back at some of the other stuff down here. This is about my last trade of the day. I've traded for the first 2 hours. I tried to get in right here, and this is actually a really good teaching opportunity. I had some scalps earlier in the day, a scalp high, a decent short, and a second account. I did try a long off the 200 first test, and also the 200 was lining up from the resistance earlier in the morning. So I tried that. Of course, they went right through, so I took a stop out. Later on, got stopped out on this deep duck through the 200, and then I just kind of left it alone, because look at the market here. It was just kind of very messy, chopping around. And then as it started to fail and sell off, we were coming down into 57.60 here. And what did I see on my 3-minute, my 15-minute, and my 30-minute? I'm not going to pull them up, but you're just going to have to take my word for it. I saw a pretty good bullish divergence potential, again, forming down from here. And I think me and Kevin were trading and chatting in the chat room. And sure enough, they ducked right into it. So on the first test, I was watching it, and I saw we're coming down. It was aggressively selling off. And I saw that this was also really extreme. So I didn't take the trade from there. This is kind of a filter for me. If I don't see a potential divergence, I'm not going to take the level, right? So as it's selling off here, right here, looks extreme. So I didn't take the trade. But when it bounced and came right back into it, and I saw that, and I had my 3-minute time frame. Again, I'm not going to go back in the 15-minute. The 15 showed potential. The 30-minute showed potential on this test. And so I went ahead and acted on it. And it ended up becoming the low of the day, which is what I expected, although it wasn't a low of the day perfectly. So I was just a little early, and they ducked just a little further lower, and then that was it. So that's the way the cookie crumbles. Sometimes you have a confluence of signals on higher time frames. You have the nice local short time frame signal to take the level, and then even though everything lines up, it still builds up a little bit further, and then eventually completes from the low and goes. So in this case, I still got a pretty awesome trade all the way up to the next roadmap level, but it never made it for the larger push, right? So that was kind of probably the best trade I took yesterday, given that everything lined up there for a larger bounce. And you can see I wasn't too wrong here. The bounce did occur within a couple points of that low, right? And then we have, again, if you're just zooming out and looking at these rotations, they are right off of these roadmap levels. There's a rejection. We get through this one. We hold the back end of it, come down to this one. We come up to this one. We bounce back and forth for nearly however long, 30, 40 minutes between these two. And then we come down, and you'll notice here, what are they holding? The back end now of the previous support, which was the roadmap level there, comes down, holds that. So it almost looks like, again, we're stair-stepping down our roadmap levels, and then bam, they come right back up. They hold that level beautifully, and there is that first clue for a rotation, because we break through the previous swing high, we get through the roadmap level, come back to it, and there's your first tag of the fast moving average, the divergence forming on the second tag right there as it tagged the roadmap level for a second time. And then from there, that began the big rally out, and then they start to, as you can see very clearly, step up the levels. There's the pullback right to that one. There's the pullback right to that one for the bounce. Of course, they had to bring it lower before they came up and rejected my friends right off the next roadmap level. Okay, and then they pull back, and you can see this. I'm not cherry picking this stuff, right? This is just happening over and over again. Right into the roadmap level, pulls back, holds FMA, gets through it, pulls back, holds it for the bounce. Okay, so scalping back and forth between these levels, even when there aren't higher time frame signals, even when you don't have a bias one way or the other, if you can nail these levels, you're going to nail the high and the low of these moves from time to time. Is it going to happen every time? No. Here's an example this morning where I tried a long from the 200 in the roadmap level. I saw divergence forming, and it took my stop and then went. Okay, so hey, that's the way the cookie crumbled on there. It did push through by like 5 points. So that's the way the market is. It's not always going to be perfect. And then earlier on in the day, I got stopped out with a very similar trade, which I showed you earlier, which was the test of the 200 and the back end of this nice resistance. And this was shortly after the open. We chopped, we broke out, came right to the VWAP, and oh, look at that, the high of the morning. is the roadmap level to the tick. And they pulled back, and I tried it, and they just went right through. Okay, but they still used that level. That level was still relevant for the resistance once they got below it. You see, but that's the way it is. And to be honest with you, I wanted to try a short right there. I just don't think I acted on it, right? So it started to show its face for the bears as we rejected off VWAP. We held the back end. We held the back end. We held the 200 basically. We got back through the first roadmap level that we were going to potentially hold. Oh, I'm sorry, we got back below that level, started coming down, and there's that tag of the FMA. Big, huge bearish divergence, hidden divergence, and then I would have nailed that pullback into the low, right? But that's the way the cookie crumbled. It's not going to be perfect every time. And I think that's good enough for our lesson this morning. Let's go ahead and jump up to the higher time frames now and see if they have anything new to add to the picture.